It's taking many years to do this survey properly, discovering for the first time the subtle remnants of farmsteads and settlements of people who've lived in this part of the Auvergne over thousands of years. Each and every site is carefully plotted, and from the map, archaeologists can tell a great deal about the way the landscape was populated and used. But of course it can't tell us everything, and it's only when a detailed and scientific examination by excavation is carried out that we begin to discover the real evidence of the way people lived and worked in this part of France. Dr. John Collis has taken one of the many sites and has been excavating it over the last 5 years, in collaboration with Robert Perrichon, a local French archaeologist. John Collis wants to discover, if he can, something about the economy of the settlement, how it developed, and why it was eventually abandoned during the 1st century BC. His excavation at Aulnay, on the outskirts of Clermont-Ferrand, is not much bigger than a tennis court, and at first sight it's very undistinguished. There are no architectural features, just ephemeral marks in the heavy black soil of the Auvergne. But John believes he has the most comprehensive series of stratified layers of any late Iron Age site in France, and the Iron Age rubbish dumps and storage pits that he's been working on have produced a wide range of rich material, including what's believed to be the only gold coin to be discovered on a late Iron Age site in France.
They really are absolutely stuffed with material. I've never dug pits which have so much material in them.
Really, what are you getting out?
Well, we've had fragments of amphorae, pottery, animal bones, all of the normal sort of domestic rubbish that one would expect from any settlement, but sort of 4 or 5 times or more what one would expect from any Iron Age site in Britain. And in addition, we've, of course, been getting other things like evidence of industrial activity. In fact, this one just in front of us, is this one with the bucket in, is of particular interest because from that we had a number of fragments of moulds for making pellets from which coins were struck. And we've had some analysis made of this using X-ray fluorescence, which has showed traces of gold and silver in the moulds. So it gives some impression of perhaps the significance of this small settlement and that they were producing gold and silver coins. As far as the animal bones are concerned, we have an enormous quantity of data. We've already looked at some of the bones, and for instance, 75% of the animals they're eating here are pig, but in this rich agricultural soil, we can expect a fair amount of agriculture, so we've been taking samples of soil to put through a sieve machine and get the carbonized grains. But obviously, if I'm looking at urban problems, it is the industrial activity that especially interests me. And the surprising thing is, from this small area, is how much industrial activity we have evidence for, not merely in terms of quantity, but the range of industries that they were engaged in.
So the people here are doing what sort of things?
Well, they're working metal. We've already mentioned the manufacture of the coins. They're working gold and silver anyway. They're engaged in bronze work, making, we think, ornaments of some sort. And for this, the evidence for this is partly from a large number of fragments of crucibles for melting the metal, and also 1 or 2 fragments of molds. But also we've had 1 or 2 fragments of coral, which seems to have been worked on the site to provide extra decoration for perhaps brooches or something like that. And of course there's ironworking, currency bars being imported in from presumably the other side of the Central Massif, slags of various sorts which have not yet been investigated, and then a range of other industries, droplets of glass suggesting that some of the beads and bracelets we find are manufactured on the site, fragments of worked bone for manufacture of buttons and dice, bone points perhaps for leatherworking, combs which seem to be for decorating pottery. So here's perhaps half a dozen or so industries which we can, with greater or lesser certainty, demonstrate this site was engaged in.
So as you put all this evidence together and you pool your ideas with your French counterpart, what sort of a picture is beginning to emerge?
I think that we are in here a pre-urban situation, that if there was a big urban site around, one would expect it to be carrying out all of these industries that we have demonstrated here. We do find little bits of ironworking on minor settlements and so on, but not this sort of range of activity. The second point is, I think, the chronological relationship between this site and Gergovie. Gergovie, whether it is Gergovia or not, is the earliest urban site that we can definitely point to in this region. And the simple fact that Olna is abandoned almost at exactly the same time as Gergovie is founded implies that the population, the urban population of Gergovie, is coming from settlements such as Olna.
So what you're beginning to see here is that this busy and diverse settlement has sort of outgrown itself, and that there was a need for a new and larger settlement to be built up on the hill. A town, in fact, where the trade, all these industries that you've observed, and the wealth could be properly organized and properly defended.
We can see this happening over this enormous area of temperate Europe, from Czechoslovakia to Britain, and it is really the moment in time when we can see a lot of our modern towns actually coming into existence. Paris, Besançon, Geneva, Bourges, Colchester, and this is all happening over this very wide area in the space of a mere 150 years or so at the very most.
This story of the Iron Age in France, and the evidence to show the first stirrings of an urban style of living, is only possible through the sort of scientific approach that Sheffield archaeologists are bringing to bear on this site. It's an approach that up till now has been missing from the average French dig, and there must be much more to learn from sites excavated years ago. In fact, the French are having another go at this site here at a place called Matre de Verre, one of those two Samian potteries that Nigel Mills was talking about earlier. Behind us, on the terraced bank of the river, a French excavation this year has uncovered a canal and pottery workshops, and they've been kind enough to show us some of the sherds they've collected. Interesting, isn't it, John, to be at the source of Samian ware, because this distinctive pottery turns up all over Britain, doesn't it?
It's not only Britain that was the market. They were supplying the Roman army on the Rhine as well, and one in fact even gets the Samian turning up outside the Roman area, turns up perhaps not commonly but fairly regularly in Scandinavia, northern Germany and Poland. So it gives one some idea of the enormous market these people were reaching.
What makes Samian so distinctive?
Well, we can see some of the bits here.
These have come out of the excavation here on this site.
These are from the excavation. These are fragments of bowls, most of which were produced on this particular site. And you can see that it's got a very distinctive red gloss, very hard fabric to it. Some of it is decorated with rouletting, but the more fancy bits, like this one here, have got standing figures. Here's a man playing a harp, a little lamb or dog here, and it's these sort of classical motifs that were being produced by stamping molds in which the pots were finally manufactured. And another distinctive thing about them, if I can find it, yes, here it is, this piece here has got a stamp on it with the actual name of the maker, C-E-T-I, a man called Ketus, and we have stamps of various sorts. Sometimes they have off something or other, standing for Officina, the factory of so-and-so. Sometimes it says something like Ketty M, by the hand of Ketus.
What about these sherds here? Can these be dated just by sifting through this box full of bits and pieces that have come out of the excavations here?
Well, a Samian expert would just pick up a piece like this and he would say immediately Matre de Verre, and then he would look at the form and say, right, this belongs to the Antonine period. If he's got a stamp, he will perhaps be able to tie it down even more closely into perhaps a decade or 2 decades.
Knowing exactly who made it, where and when.
Yes, and one can do this even with a sherd which just has a small piece of decoration, because the molds seem to have been used by very specific individuals at times, and one can virtually draw up pattern books to say which patterns an individual potter was using.
Matre de Verre and the even bigger pottery town of Lazoux are prime sites in the Roman world which have hardly been touched. But the material that has come out, like the wooden votive offerings we saw earlier, is remarkable. In the museum, they've got some grave goods from a burial associated with the potteries, a chance find in the 1930s. And there's a dark brown, coarsely woven woman's dress, there in the display case, apparently perfectly preserved.
Yes, it was found on the skeleton of a young woman, and it was preserved by the carbonic acid which comes from a particular spring at Le Marche.
Made of Hessian.
It's made of some sort of wool, and you can see also she's got these beautiful woolen stockings and these rather nice soft leather shoes.
But the preservation, I've never seen anything like that before.
Yes, it really is an incredible find, and if we go across into this other case over here, you'll see that, well, not merely we've got the wooden shoes with the leather attachments, we've got a little basket there, but we've also got the hair of these people. You can see that's plaited in a sort of pigtail arrangement, and apparently when they were first discovered, the skin of the people was also preserved, but that became oxidized after the excavation and disappeared.
All this was in a cemetery associated with the pottery?
Yes, it's never been systematically excavated at all. These were really some chance discoveries, and they date mainly to the 2nd century AD. And over here we've got some of the pots which were placed with the burial. Of course, pots are always found with burials, but I think this is the only case that I know of where we've actually got the contents of the pots. Here, for instance, there's a whole collection of plums. Behind you have some nuts, some raisins, some coriander seeds, and here we have a cake preserved.
And is this the coffin that all this might have come out of?
Yes, again, all of the wood is preserved, as you can see, and we can see the way in which the whole thing was constructed, held together by iron nails.
Are there many finds like this from the Roman world?
I would say this find is utterly unique.
Finds like this are just an indication of the riches the Auvergne has to offer. And with attitudes to archaeology beginning to change in France, with the ongoing Anglo-French excavation, the scientific backup offered by Sheffield University, and the general strengthening of ties between French and British archaeologists, we can look forward perhaps to more spectacular discoveries. Finds which could substantially change our understanding of many aspects of early history, not only in the Auvergne, but of Western Europe as a whole.